Happy Halloween, folks, and welcome back to WrestleRant, where every single Tuesday I, Graham Gius and Matthews, break down all the pay-per-views and live specials I watch on the WWE Network. Unfortunately, despite the Halloween holiday today, I will not be talking about Halloween Havoc, but that said, I do have some exciting news. In 4 weeks from today, on the November 28th episode of WrestleRant, I will be reviewing my first ever WWE, non-WWE pay-per-view or NXT show on WrestleRant. I'll be talking either about a WCW pay-per-view, an ECW pay-per-view, or maybe even a TNA pay-per-view. Maybe not necessarily from the WWE Network, but rather from the Global Wrestling Network. And I've talked about before, like, should I review TNA pay-per-views here on the show? And I never really had easy access to old TNA pay-per-views until now that I'm subbed to the Global Wrestling Network. Anyway, though, I'm looking forward to that, and it won't be the same format that I've done for WrestleRant in the last couple of years, where I've taken a bunch, like one pay-per-view, like Armageddon, and I review Armageddon 99, 2000, 01, 02, 03, 04, 05, so on and so forth in a row. I won't be doing that with WCW, ECW, and etc., and, TNA, whatever. The format I will be doing instead is asking you guys what you want to see me review here on the show. So, if you don't have a Twitter, I apologize, but the polls will be going up on Twitter, and, me asking questions, like the same way I gather questions for hashtag AskGSM, is the same way I'll be doing it for WrestleRant. I mean, then again, if you don't have Twitter, that's fine. If you're listening to this on YouTube, drop a comment down below. What WCW pay-per-view do you want to hear me review on WrestleRant? Is it Starrcade 93? Do you want to hear me talk about Halloween Havoc 1998? Like, what shows do you want me to watch? Because I have no personal preference. I'm not huge into WCW in terms of knowledge and knowing everything about it, so I'll be learning something while watching these shows, whether it's really, really good and you want me to talk about it, or it's really, really bad, and you want me to talk about it. So let me know in the comment section down below. On Twitter, I'll be putting up a tweet soon enough, or on Facebook, or wherever, letting me know what you want me to watch and review for WrestleRant in 4 weeks from today on November 28th. So just keep that in mind. It's a little ways away. And before that, we are talking about NXT TakeOver The End here today on the show from June of 2016. I would say one of the more underrated NXT TakeOvers. Not the best, and not the most newsworthy, necessarily, but it was a very entertaining event on the whole. So we kick off the show, the debut of Andrade Cien Almas, taking on Ty Dillinger, the Perfect 10, in what was a very good match. I thought it was the best bet to kick off the show, a good way to showcase Almas and get in his in-ring repertoire and what he's all about and how he can go in the ring, and the crowd was into him, but the issue here was that they were more into Ty Dillinger, and that was pretty much the issue throughout the first 6 or 7 months of the Andrade Cien Almas character in NXT. They were more into his opponents than they were into Almas. Like, he faced Ty Dillinger, they chanted for Dillinger. They wanted Dillinger to win. I mean, they were into Almas too, but they really were behind Dillinger just as much, if not more, than Almas, which was a problem. From there, he feuded with Bobby Roode, who they were also huge into. Almost got booed at TakeOver Brooklyn too, which I'll talk about next week. But the guy just never really clicked. And I thought his goofy attire did him no favors with the damn straw, not the straw hat, but like the little feather coming out of his cap and the overalls. It was a dumb look. And he really shined as Manny Andrade when he faced, I think, Austin Aries at the NXT Live event that we went to, RJ and I, in Lowell, Massachusetts in April of that same year, a few months prior. He really shined. I was looking forward to seeing him in NXT on NXT TV as, the former La Sombra from Mexico, But, they never really fleshed out his character, so while this was a good debut and it was a fun match, it was pretty evident even from the get-go that Dillinger was just as big of a star, if not bigger than Almas, and he had better, not even character development. People were just into the guy due to his fun gimmick. Almas didn't really have a gimmick. He was a great wrestler, but everyone's a great wrestler in 2016, 2017, so what's the difference, you know what I mean? So even from the start, it was evident that there would be problems with the Almas character, that something would need to change. Thankfully, they turned him heel. At first, I'm thinking, don't turn him heel. It's way too soon, blah, blah, blah. But they did turn him heel in the end by the end of 2016. And he's been doing great ever since. Almas is a fucking great heel. Is a fucking great heel. The El Igalo shit is awesome. The guy looks like an asshole. So I'm looking forward to seeing him challenge for the NXT Championship against Drew McIntyre this coming month, next month, whatever, November, at TakeOver War Games. But as a debut, this was a good match. After that, for the NXT Tag Team titles, The Revival challenging for the gold against American Alpha in a rematch from TakeOver Dallas. Great match. Awesome match. In my opinion, the match of the night. And Nakamura and Aries was also really good, as was the main event, but I thought this was the true match of the night with tag team wrestling at its finest between the Revival and American Alpha. Now, before the Revival and DIY and the New Day versus the Usos, and I talked about this in my TakeOver Dallas review last week, that these two teams really raised the bar for tag team wrestling, not only in NXT, but in WWE on the whole, because they worked so wonderfully together. The matches were so fucking great. It was the little things that made them so awesome. And like I raved about in my Dallas review, that first match was fantastic. This one was even better. For a match I really, not that I wasn't expecting anything from, because I knew they worked well together, I knew they were going to have a great match, but it was a rematch. Usually you have the rematch and American Alpha retains, whatever, it's a forgettable match. But they really went all out here with the near falls and making it look like the Revival was going to win. And in the end, they did. Because a lot of people were banking on Alpha retaining the belts. They just won them at TakeOver Dallas. It's like, oh my God, it's a burial of American Alpha. It's not. They were main roster bound anyway. The Revival was fucking killing it. There was nothing left for them to do, aside from becoming two-time NXT Tag Team Champions. The first two-time champions of any kind in NXT. Now, I think, was it Bo Dallas Neville was a two-time NXT Tag Team Champion, but with two different partners. The first team of any kind to win the tag titles twice. So that was really, really cool. But the match itself was awesome. The near falls down the stretch were fantastic. And the crowd popped big when the Revival picked up the win and became the new NXT Tag Team Champions. And if that wasn't enough, American Alpha got laid out afterwards by the debuting Authors of Pain. So it was a pretty newsworthy night in that respect, in terms of the Revival winning back the gold and then the Authors of Pain arriving on the scene. Two guys who looked fairly green. They weren't off to a great start, but they were slowly built up. And again, another team that's really come into their own as a great tag team in NXT, having great matches with American Alpha, the Revival, DIY, Sanity, and the list goes on and on and on. And I'll be looking forward to their War Games match next. It's crazy how much a year and how big of a difference a year and a half makes, which is why I do this show. See, like I said, I'm looking forward to War Games next month. I'm looking forward to that because the Authors of Pain will be involved. And those guys, again, started out as green superstars, top prospects, but they were very green. But they've really progressed quite a bit in the year and a half they've been in NXT. So, looking forward to that. But as for this match, this was fucking great. Good title change that sent the American Alpha to the main roster, specifically SmackDown Live. After that, for the first time ever, one-on-one, Shinsuke Nakamura versus Austin Aries. And a fucking great match. In my opinion, one of the more underrated matches of 2016. Now, I didn't put it didn't even come close. Like, it was an honorable mention in my top 25 best bouts in WWE and NXT in 2016 for Bleacher Report, that article I wrote on Christmas Day. But it didn't crack the top 25. It did not crack the top 25. And it was a great match, but the issue was that we had a lot of great matches last year. There were a lot of awesome matches in 2016 for WWE. So while this was a great match, it wasn't the best match of the year or Nakamura's best match of the year. The bar was, set pretty high with Nakamura and Zayn, and him and Joe had a couple good matches too in Brooklyn and the other takeovers in Toronto and in Japan and all the other places, but in Australia as well. But anyway, this was a really, really good match. Aries was not yet a full-fledged heel, but he was teasing it. He did get some, a fair share of boos here, but he kind of flew under the radar when he came into NXT, when he first debuted on the same show that Nakamura debuted on, TakeOver Dallas. And because he debuted on that same show, and the two titles changing hands, and Nakamura debuting in a Match of the Year candidate with Sami Zayn, Aries' debut kind of got, like I said, flew under the radar. So he had the chance to attempt to not be overshadowed anymore by Nakamura in this match and upstage Nakamura by beating him here. Of course, he fell short, but it was a great fucking match. The promo was awesome. Aries is like, there's always the best in the world, which is out there, and you're only the best until someone else comes in the room, which is why I prefer to be called great, the greatest man that ever lived, which I'm not sure if they used that gimmick in NXT or not. I don't remember, but anyway, for what this was, really, really good match. Aries came in with tape wrapped around his ribs. I'm not sure where that was from. It was never really explained. He might have gotten hurt on a live event or something, but he wasn't out of action. And, it did work to the match's benefit, because Aries did like a flying dive through the ring and he landed on the barricade stomach first, so that obviously cost him the contest before Nakamura picked up the victory. But I don't know where the injury stemmed from, though. I'm not sure where that came from. But anyway, great match. Nakamura continues to build momentum ahead of challenging for the NXT Championship at the subsequent TakeOver. After that, for the NXT Women's Championship, Asuka defending against Nia Jax. Now, it was supposed to be Asuka and Bayley on the show. Not that Bayley got hurt or anything like that. They took her off the show because they thought it would be better for her to go after the belt in the same TakeOver, in the same arena that she won the first championship in the Barclays Center at TakeOver Brooklyn 2. Well, she won it at Brooklyn 1, but they wanted to have her go after the championship again at Brooklyn 2. So that made sense. And having Nia Jax as a filler feud for Asuka worked, because they had teased the feud before at TakeOver London. I think it was right after Asuka beat Emma. And then backstage, before Nia Jax went for the championship that night, Asuka came up to her and taunted her, making it look like that was the next championship feud. Thankfully, Nia Jax would not win the title that night, and she would go for the championship again on this show. And it was a good match. Definitely paled in comparison to women's matches in the past, from the past in NXT's illustrious TakeOver history. But it was still a really good match, and a great match by Nia Jax standards. Now, she's not had a lot of great matches in her brief 2 years in WWE, but for what this was, it was a damn good match. Asuka battling up against the odds, against the, playing off the David versus Goliath dynamic there with Asuka and Nia Jax. Nia Jax coming oh so close to winning the championship, but it just wasn't enough before she fell short after Asuka just railed her with fucking kick after kick after kick. Kicked her right in the side of the head to retain the title. So again, a good match. Not quite as good as past TakeOver women's matches, but still very good nonetheless. And then we get to the main event, or even before the main event, we had Bobby Roode walk by William Regal backstage. But at that point, it was pretty obvious he was coming into NXT. We just weren't sure in what capacity. And, we kind of knew he was going to debut at some point as a wrestler, but we just didn't know when. Because he was in the crowd at TakeOver Dallas. He walked by William Regal here before Regal chased after him to talk to him, I guess, backstage. But he wouldn't debut officially for another 2 months or so, unfortunately. But anyway, so that was another tease for Bobby Roode coming to NXT. And that kind of got away from the speculation that he would interfere in this match and cost Balor or Joe the match. So the main event for the NXT Championship, a steel cage match. The first ever in NXT's history, if you could believe that, which is crazy. By this point, NXT had been around for 4 years, and in this, as the incarnation that it was, as the developmental brand for WWE, not the fucking crappy competition show, they had never done a steel cage match. They had done a ton of 2 out of 3 falls matches, but never a steel cage match. So they made the most of it. Balor and Joe did. They had a lot of good matches. I really enjoyed their series of matches personally. Joe and Nakamura had some good matches too when they feuded over the NXT title later on in the year. But I thought Joe and Balor had some better chemistry. That London match was really good. The Dallas match I thought was the best of the bunch. This might have been the weakest of the 3 matches, but it was still really, really good. At one point, Balor looking like he was going to hit the coup de grace off the top of the steel cage. Joe would knock him off and ensure, before Balor could escape, he said, fuck it, I'm going to go for the coup de grace instead. And in the end, it was Samoa Joe hitting the muscle buster off the top of the cage. Not the very, very top, but I think off the top rope onto Balor to retain the championship. Now, if he did that to Balor here, why won't they let Samoa Joe use the move on the fucking main roster? That's my question. And I don't want to hear, they're saving it for a big moment. It's like, no, they're not. Joe has been in big matches. He's been in main event of pay-per-views. He main evented 3 fucking consecutive pay-per-views between Extreme Rules, Great Balls of Fire, and SummerSlam. And he did not even attempt to go for the Muscle Buster in any of those matches. That has yet to even be brought up by commentators at this point. So I'm not sure what the status is of the Muscle Buster. It must be banned. But if it worked in NXT, I don't know why they wouldn't do it on the main roster. I don't know if it's the whole Tyson Kidd thing from a few years ago. I'm not sure. But anyway, I thought that was a fantastic finish. Joe holding on to the championship as he should have, and beating the Demon in his first loss at an NXT TakeOver, setting the stage for Balor to leave NXT before, right after losing, to Shinsuke Nakamura on an episode of NXT TV, and then going off and joining the Raw roster in the WWE 2016 draft in the summer of that year. So overall, a very, very good show. All 5 matches delivered. If I had to rank them, Asuka and Jax would be 5. Almas and Dillinger would be 4. 3, Joe and Balor. 2, Nakamura and Aries. And 1, Revival and American Alpha. All 5 matches were good to great to amazing, though, and it was another really very good, entertaining, and albeit underrated TakeOver. Again, not the best one they ever did, not the most newsworthy, like I said, beyond the Authors of Pain debuting and the Revival regaining the gold. It was more of a filler show between TakeOver Dallas and TakeOver Brooklyn 2, but it was still a very good show nonetheless, and very, very, very much well worth your time to check out on the WWE Network. So speaking of TakeOver Brooklyn 2, we are talking about that next week right here on the show on November 7th on WrestleRant, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, and in between time, folks, be sure to follow me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. And that's about it. So all that being said, folks, enjoy the rest of your Halloween. Have a very scary day. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.